What does it really mean to lead the most powerful army on Earth? To give orders that send thousands into battle, and sometimes into death. We remember the wars, we remember the victories, but we rarely ask, what was the cost of command? Not just in blood, but in the hearts of the men who carried that responsibility. This is the untold story of U.S. Army leadership, from muskets to drones, from Washington to modern war zones. You haven't seen this history before. The American Revolution wasn't just a war of independence. It was a test of leadership without precedent. In 1775, George Washington was appointed to lead an army that didn't yet exist. No professional soldiers, no steady pay, no stable government. He didn't command men, he held them together. Each decision Washington made was shadowed by a truth few acknowledged. If he failed, the dream of America failed with him. At Valley Forge, his troops starved and froze. Congress offered little help. In his private correspondence, Washington didn't speak of victory. He spoke of holding on just long enough. To lead then meant bearing the weight of a revolution's survival and carrying it in silence. Nearly a century later, another commander, Ulysses S. Grant, would lead in a war not against a foreign empire, but against his own divided country. He was criticized for his relentless offensives, but he understood the truth of war. The longer it drags on, the more it destroys. And so he chose speed over sentiment, even when it meant tens of thousands of lives lost under his orders. Grant's silence wasn't indifference. It was burden. He drank to escape it. He wrote little about it. But every mile he pushed forward brought the Union one step closer to healing, and him further into isolation. After the Civil War, the Army transformed from a domestic force into an instrument of American expansion. The Indian Wars placed commanders like General William Tecumseh Sherman into moral gray zones. To many Americans, he was a hero. To the native nations, he was a destroyer of worlds. Sherman's leadership reflected a new burden, not how to win, but who must be crushed to achieve national goals. By the time the Spanish-American War began, the U.S. had crossed oceans. Command now meant occupying foreign lands, suppressing uprisings, and justifying imperial ambitions. In the Philippines, General Arthur MacArthur faced not a battlefield, but a people unwilling to submit. The rules were unclear, the enemy invisible. Civilians were indistinguishable from fighters. He once said, "There's no manual for this kind of war." And that's the weight, commanding in the absence of clarity. Then came the global conflicts. Wars so vast they swallowed continents. In World War I, General John J. Pershing brought millions of American soldiers to Europe. He demanded they fight as Americans, not absorbed into Allied units. This was about independent command, national pride. But that pride came at a cost. Tens of thousands dead in outdated frontal assaults. Tactics from another era led into a modern hell of machine guns and gas. By 1944, command wasn't about pride. It was about managing the largest multinational military effort in history. General Dwight A. Eisenhower had no frontline heroism. His war was diplomacy, compromise, timing. Before launching D-Day, he wrote a letter accepting full blame if the invasion failed. That letter, never sent, remains the clearest expression of the commander's burden. When everything depends on you, even the unknown must be owned. After World War II, the U.S. Army didn't rest. It rearmed. The Cold War was not a battlefield, but a chessboard, and generals became strategic players with global consequences. In Korea, General Matthew Ridgway took command after MacArthur's dismissal. The army was demoralized, retreating, doubting. Ridgway didn't make speeches. He walked the front lines, ate with troops, and rebuilt morale quietly. He understood that leadership wasn't just tactics, it was presence. In Vietnam, the burden took a darker turn. General William Westmoreland led an army trained for conventional war, but faced a guerrilla force on foreign soil in a conflict no one knew how to define. To show progress, he used metrics, body counts, kill ratios, charts. But leadership by data created illusion, not clarity. The true burden wasn't just the war, it was the disconnect between strategy and reality, between political expectation and battlefield truth. The commander was no longer just a soldier, he was a politician, a media figure, a symbol. And when that symbol cracked, it wasn't just a war that ended, it was trust. The post-Vietnam Army rebuilt itself. It professionalized, it trained for precision, not presence. But command would face its hardest test in a new century. In Iraq and Afghanistan, commanders like General David Petraeus redefined modern warfare with counterinsurgency doctrine. They spoke of winning hearts and minds, of soldiers as diplomats, of restraint and nation-building. But even the best plans faced an enemy that wouldn't stand and fight, only vanish and strike again. The burden wasn't just violence, it was the futility of control. Commanders now navigated tribal politics, 24-hour media cycles, global scrutiny. And in the shadows, the battlefield shifted again. Drones replaced pilots, algorithms assisted targeting. Commanders no longer looked their enemies in the eye, they saw them through screens. Today, a U.S. Army general may oversee cyber operations against foreign infrastructure, real-time satellite tracking of threats, AI-assisted combat simulations, joint space defense with international allies. The burden now is the invisibility of threat, of consequence, of decision. You don't hear the gunfire, you don't see the battlefield, but if you give the wrong order or if your system miscalculates, it's your responsibility. The faces change, the wars change, the weapons change, but the burden stays. It is the quiet acceptance of knowing you will be blamed if it fails. You will bury the people who followed your orders. You may never know if it was the right decision, only that it was yours. Leadership in the U.S. Army isn't just command, it's carrying the unbearable because no one else can. If this gave you a new way to see military leadership, subscribe for more history that asks deeper questions.